When this story first appeared in the news, it seemed straightforward. A missing woman, a home without obvious signs of chaos, an assumption, kidnapping for ransom. The public is used to that narrative. When someone disappears suddenly under unclear circumstances, money becomes the default explanation. It's familiar, it's digestible, it reduces the discomfort of uncertainty. But within hours of the investigation beginning, it became clear. This wasn't simple. Sheriff Chris Nanos arrived at the scene and made a decision that quietly changed everything. He did not follow the standard missing person protocol. He did not limit the response to search coordination and interviews. Instead, he immediately brought in homicide detectives. That is not a routine administrative choice. In law enforcement, homicide investigators are called when something at the scene suggests the possibility of death, even if a body has not been found. For the public, that detail barely registered. But for professionals, it was the first signal. Why escalate so quickly? The answer begins with a number. 41 minutes. Digital timestamps from the home's security system revealed that the perpetrators remained inside the residence for 41 minutes. 41. On the surface, that number may not sound extraordinary, but in criminal investigations, time is behavior, and behavior reveals intent. In a typical kidnapping scenario, speed is everything. Enter quickly, gain control, exit immediately. Every additional minute inside a private residence increases risk. Neighbors, surveillance, unexpected returns. 41 minutes is not rushed. It is not panicked. It is not improvised. It is enough time to move deliberately through a home, to check rooms, to interact with systems, to operate without visible urgency. To remain that long, you must feel confident. Confident that no one will unexpectedly return. Confident that the environment is under control. Confident that the security system is handled. That is not the behavior of opportunistic criminals. And this is where the original kidnapping narrative begins to fracture. But time was only the first inconsistency. On the kitchen counter were Nancy's essential medications, left behind. To a casual observer, that might seem minor. To investigators, it is not. Kidnapping for ransom relies on a single principle. The victim must remain alive, not out of compassion, but out of leverage. A living victim is bargaining power. Any threat to the victim's health undermines the entire operation. Professional kidnappers account for medical needs. They understand that if the victim deteriorates physically, the value of the crime collapses. Yet, in this case, critical medication was untouched. If those prescriptions were necessary for survival, ignoring them signals one of two things. Either the perpetrators were astonishingly incompetent, or the victim's survival was not central to the plan. And here lies the contradiction. The same individuals who carefully disabled a home security system demonstrated planning and technical knowledge. Yet they supposedly made a naive mistake about medication? That inconsistency demands attention. The security system itself was not smashed or crudely disabled. Cameras were not violently destroyed. The system was taken offline in a way that suggests familiarity with its architecture. To do that cleanly, one must know where control points are located. One must understand how components interact. One must anticipate which actions trigger alerts and which do not. This is not impulsive behavior. Random burglars rarely invest time studying a home's security infrastructure. They ignore it, overwhelm it, or break it. Here, we see something different: calculated interference, which raises a critical question. Who knew this house? Who had prior access? Who understood its layout? Who had the opportunity to observe its vulnerabilities? At this stage, the investigation inevitably widens. Attention shifts from external threats to internal knowledge. Contractors, service technicians, anyone who had legitimate reason to enter the home, anyone who could have studied it without raising suspicion. And then another detail becomes significant. Nancy's disappearance occurred while Savannah Guthrie was on an international trip. Coincidence? For a random offender? Perhaps. For someone tracking the family's schedule, it represents an ideal window. Fewer variables, fewer potential interruptions, fewer unexpected witnesses. When details begin aligning with precision, randomness starts to feel unlikely. Investigators are obligated to examine competing theories. The first possibility, a kidnapping that went wrong. Perhaps an amateur operation that spiraled beyond control. But that theory struggles under scrutiny. It does not explain the 41-minute confidence. It does not explain the sophisticated handling of security systems. It does not explain the disregard for life-sustaining medication. The second possibility, staging. A kidnapping fabricated to conceal a personal dispute, financial conflict, revenge. Such scenarios are not unheard of, but they require planning and access, and they often rely on insider knowledge. Which leads to the third theory, insider involvement. Someone with access, someone with information, someone aware of the family's routines, someone who understood precisely when the house would be most vulnerable. It is important to be clear. Investigators do not build cases on suspicion alone. They build them on convergence of facts. 41 minutes inside the home. Critical medication left behind. Security disabled with apparent expertise. A disappearance timed during international travel. Each element alone might be explainable. Together, they form a pattern. This is why Sheriff Nanos's early decision mattered. By treating the scene with homicide-level preservation standards, investigators ensured that evidence was collected with the highest scrutiny. Digital records were secured, timelines were reconstructed, chains of custody were maintained. If the original kidnapping narrative proved inaccurate, the evidence would still withstand judicial examination. That is not emotional reaction. It is strategic foresight. Cases like this are often consumed as dramatic stories, but in reality, they are exercises in disciplined reasoning. They are about identifying contradictions, about asking why repeatedly, until surface explanations fall apart. Why did the perpetrators stay so long? Why did they ignore essential medication? Why did they act as though they understood the home intimately? Why did the timing align so precisely? As those questions accumulate, the picture shifts. This does not resemble a chaotic abduction. It resembles planning. And that distinction matters. Because this case is not simply about a disappearance. It is about how professional investigation challenges assumptions. How one detail, a number, a behavior, a technical action, can dismantle a widely accepted narrative. Truth rarely announces itself loudly. It reveals itself in inconsistencies. And sometimes, all it takes is asking the right question, about something as simple as 41 minutes, to see an entirely different story emerging.